so many people are going to be hit by this. Nearly 7 billion people on this planet. The world is slowly grinding to a halt, and so many people are completely oblivious as to what is happening. The dry bulk index dropped another 10 points. It's now at 373. And that was from, in 2008, it fell from 9,600 to what it is now. And, I've been trying to figure out what it is that is actually moving around in the cargo shipping area right now, and the only thing I can think of is food. I was even considering that now confronted with this information and watching the shipping slow down, we've seen some people report that the majority of cargo ships are just anchored up now. They're no longer in transit. They're no longer carrying freight. And we're hearing from some people that know these big shipping families, these billionaires that own these ships, say that the reason why they're not putting these ships out is because they're running them at a loss if they do. It just makes me think, China, the powerhouse of the globe, over 1.5 billion people, is it? In China alone? And when all this shipping ceases to, be moved from China, all their exports, nobody seems to, be purchasing. What effect will that have on that vast population alone in that country? Let alone what's happening in the West. These people need a job, just like us, to participate in a monetary system. And failing to do that fails to secure those necessities which they now depend on in their country, just like we do. Food. Keep the rent paid. Keep the bills being paid. And all this is shortly to come slamming into the wall and stop. Think about it. 9,600 points down to 373 since 2008. Another thing is, if you look at this chart here, you'll see that around just before, we had that massive market crash, you'll see we're about where we are today, which is around about there. So we was at 5,800 points, the FTSE 100 was, this time in 2008. So our Western global leaders have achieved absolutely nothing to stem this problem. And once more, they failed to tell us what actually happened in 2008. But if you look at the dry bulk index, it tells you what happened. The markets collapsed. They didn't tell the public. What they've tried to do since then is stem the artery from bleeding, and they've failed. And the proof of that is, just look at where the market is today. Back where it was in 2008, just before the great big crash at that time. It makes me wonder why the plunge protection teams now in the stock markets haven't been in there this week shutting things down, as we've seen before. And more recently with China and the United States reporting glitches when they start to see things go very badly wrong. The UK this week lost £113 billion off of its top 100 companies. Companies are laying off people left, right and centre. And not just in the UK, the United States. And the problem is here, guys, is that we live in a monetary system, and the only way we can obtain money is by a job. Well, we know, don't we? We know what sort of jobs are available. Okay? And we know that there are these, fully qualified people, right, being reduced now to flipping burgers in McDonald's. And that's wrong. That's totally wrong. Stacking shelves when you've got a PhD or a doctorate. these people don't realise what they've done. What they've done is bailed themselves out individually and left entire nations now to face what's coming. And you've got to realise it's coming. And you know what? I even suffer this myself. You try and tell you and warn your families of what's happening. And even my family, they'll listen to a certain degree. You can't go into too much detail because it's just physically too much for them to comprehend. Their eyes start to roll, their eyebrows raise. He's off again. It's not the case. People should have been prepared months ago for this. I don't really pay too much attention, although it is important to how the stock markets are going. But if you look at the dry bulk index, that tells you about everything you need to know right now about the economy and whether it's been improving. And I guarantee you'll see that if you look at any dry bulk index graphs, you will see a massive plunge to where we are right now. And there has been no improvement in that. And you want to think about this. If ships aren't moving cargo, what jobs are going to be on the line next? Delivery drivers? Trains carrying freight? Because if it ain't coming in the country, it certainly isn't going to be circulating in the country. And if it's not circulating in the country, then these jobs, such as shop works, like we've seen, just one for instance, Sports Direct, he lost, that guy, Ashley lost, was it 1.2 billion off his company last week? And we're going to start seeing these people lose their jobs that work in these shops and work for these, super companies. Are you seeing Walmart, sacrifice jobs? The oil industry sacrifice jobs. And I don't know how true this is, right? But I'm pretty sure that Saudi Arabia were prepared to drop the price of oil to $4 a barrel. Now, I don't know how true that is or where I heard that from, but if it's at $30 now and it's crippling the oil industry globally, what will it do when it gets to $4 a barrel? Will it even be worth pulling out the ground at that cost? We're in some serious times, guys. And this is just the start. I mean, the last thing you want, right, is a situation like this with what we're facing on another scale, on a climate global scale, with all the big changes that nobody seems to be talking about. It's incredible. It's frustrating that nobody from the mainstream media are seeing the wider scope of what's happening with, the world's climate, with the magnetic pole shifting for the first time in 780,000 years. It's insane, but it's coming closer, guys. We're getting closer to that point. I mean, if the shipping has gone down to that much, I guarantee you the only thing that seems to be moving round now is necessities. Food. You'll have crude moving round in these tankers, because I had a look on the ship tracker myself, and most of the ships that I found that was still moving about were, oil tankers. You can't warn people. But I do feel like you should still try right to the end. I predicted the FTSE 100 doing this nearly 2 weeks ago, and I knew Monday, just gone, that this was going to happen this week. But I've got to say, in all honesty, I expected the plunge protection team to go in a lot earlier and start banging this back up to 6,000. but they didn't. They could have, but they didn't. They could have done it with the Dow Jones as well, but they didn't. And I thought for a minute that they'd pegged the FTSE and the Dow on the Hang Seng, China's currency, and when that devaluated, so did ours, and when it increased, so would theirs. So that there'd be some sort of medium in the market, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Right, now, if the dry bulk index has dropped to what it has, and the FTSE 100 or the top 100 companies in the UK and like other companies such as Apple and stuff are, maintaining good ground, you've got to ask yourself then, how are they managing to do that? Where's the money coming from to keep the stocks inflated? Because whilst things are good, well, it's just insane. It's not. You can figure it out for yourself, can't you, guys? What's happening? And it ain't working, and it hasn't worked. If we go back to 2008, right? If you look here on this box here, the darker blue one, when I get to 2008 or thereabouts, you'll see that it's at 5,625. Yeah, let's go a little bit further back. Yeah, well, it's at 6,000 there. That's during 2008. If you look at the current market right now, you'll see that we're exactly where we were back in 2008 before the big drop happened. I believe that could be on the cards if the plunge protection team allow it to go ahead. Now, are they at the point in time where they know if they keep kicking the can and quantitative easing these companies, then they're just putting off the inevitable, and when it does happen, it'll be a lot worse than what it is right now, for sure. You just seem to compile the trouble that you're building if you leave it further on down the road. But had this give themselves enough time to make sure that they're safe, because I guarantee you guys, it's not just Hollywood that show it in the films like 2012, that when just before they're about to report, the world's coming to an end, it's actually when people are already seeing it, and that advice is just a complete waste. And I believe that's exactly what they do with the markets. Well, the economy's shot, the climate is shot, and let's face it, other matters around the world aren't too good, are they? Russia are really worried about what's going on, and China likewise, because Russia at the moment are preparing their strategic missile defence and readiness to 95%. So are they worried that there's going to be a repeat in history like back in 1938? After the recession, there was a major depression, and Hitler came into power, and it wasn't long after, was it? 1940s, early 1940s, we were at World War. Just have a look what's going on in Syria. I mean, is it worth fighting for crude oil if it goes to $4 a barrel? We are, right now, overpopulated with a workforce that's redundant. This is just what has caused all this, is a failing to see what was coming down the road. When we was advancing in technology, people failed to see that it was taking jobs off people, and that they failed to see that those people, right, still had to participate in a monetary system. I'm not talking about benefits, given benefits, because people can't live on benefits. People are falling into debt because of being on benefits, through no fault of their own. It isn't their fault. The people running these countries are only looking after their friends, the few, the 1%. The whole thing's just a massive failure to understand, what has been happening over the last 50 years. A natural progression in technology, an increase in population. And the two just don't coincide with each other. You can't have technology taking away jobs, increasing population, right? So that there's even more demand on the work, to get a job. Well, all that does is push labour prices down, because your factories know they can get away with it, and they can get away with it even more so if a government introduces minimum wage. Because all this I keep hearing people say to me is, they're on minimum wage. It seems like it's across the range. Everyone's on minimum wage. A salary that cannot provide anything, any stability for any family. That's the reality. We have destroyed a whole generation. These new kids coming up into the workforce are now being forced to take low-paid jobs that was paid well 10, 15 years ago, now are paid so poorly. And if you've got children yourself that are recently left school, they're in their early 20s, yourself they can't afford to leave home. They can't afford to get car insurance, to drive a car. Well, I've seen this. I've seen what the government were doing when they pushed up the age for children to enter the workforce, which meant that they had to stay on longer in school. I knew what they was doing. They was trying to, give themselves a buffet zone during this period of time where the markets have collapsed. But they've failed. And if only they'd have been paying attention, which I believe they have, to the dry bulk index, they would have seen how they could have gauged how well they was doing with what the manipulation they was doing. All these quantitative easings haven't helped the dry bulk index improve. And if, economies are run on selling things, then, exports and imports are critically important to the economy. Why hasn't David Cameron or Barack Obama paid any attention whatsoever to the dry bulk index? Why doesn't those couple of words come out of their mouths? The dry bulk index. Why? Are they even aware of how to run an economy and what underpins an economy? Is my question. If individuals that are not economic experts can spot it, surely you would think that these people would have advisors telling them of such thing. It can't be the fact that they have an interest in smashing the economy. Or are they that insane that they would do it on purpose? Is this what they've modelled so that they can get their New World Order in plan? Well, it makes you wonder, if you've got a world where half the world live in poverty, like China was 20, 30 years ago, and the other half of the world, that are relatively living in luxury, and you've got to somehow control the globe, then at some point you have to bring those that are in poverty up to the middle ground, and those that are in luxury down to middle ground equally, and then you stand a better chance at trying to take over a globe. And who knows, is this what they've done? Have they planned it? Just putting that out there. Destroy the capital markets in order to achieve this? And, have they factored in that this could cause wars? We're really close to something happening right now, I believe, in the Middle East. Countries are standing up to the United States now and saying, we're not having it. Russia have done it. No one can say a word about it. Russia have definitely done it when they went into Syria and said, we'll take on ISIS. They stood up to the US. And, just crazy, isn't it, guys? What will happen Monday when the stock market's open? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if the plunge protection get in there and start hyperinflating the markets again to bring it over 6,000. But my question is, why didn't they do it this week? Did they want to drive the stocks down to try and steal that money off people? Were they hoping that people would sell at the lowest so that they could buy and then pump them back up and drop them when they're at healthier levels? Because this is the skullduggery which is going on in the stock markets now. Talk about algorithms. 100,000 transactions a second a computer can do. What chance has an individual got? Crazy times we're living in. And it's going to come to a halt at some point. And you only got to look at the dry bulk index to tell you that. 373 points, down from 9,600 since 2008. Stock market's at the same level since 2008, just before the crash. And we're hearing banks like RBS telling people to sell everything apart from high yield government bonds. Just watch this space, guys. More important than the pole shift right now is this, because this will affect everybody. Short term, the pole shift is going to affect everyone long term. It's going to bring everyone back down to reality. And I've said this before, this universe has a unique way of putting, when it lets things like humans play with things for a bit, but inevitably, whatever you took out the box, you have to put back in the box. Whatever come out the box in the first place goes back into the box. The cells in your body that you're borrowing right now to function as a human being are going back in that box. In 100 years is the only time, most people get to borrow those parts. They go back in the box. The trees that make carbon and all the CO2, oxygen, gold, silver, all goes back in the box. It's a recycling machine, this universe. And I know when you look out your window and you only see a tiny fraction of this universe, it's hard to comprehend the wider picture. But inevitably, it's going back in the box. All what we've built as sophisticated human beings on this planet is going back in the box. And I believe, the more stuff we build today with the newer technology, it only goes back in the box much quicker. How long does a computer stay on the market before it becomes obsolete? 8 years. And then it's scrapped, broke down for its components, the tiny little bits of gold removed back off the circuit boards, get remelted back into more circuit board components. And it's just a fractal system, this universe, it seems sometimes when you look at it like this. It all goes back in the box, doesn't it? Guys, I have had a little bit of a ramble here and I apologise for that. There's a link down there if you want to support some of the work we do on this channel. I will make a prediction, and I know how wrong it is to give time scales, but I reckon March we're going to see something significant with markets, this situation in the Middle East, and I also believe, I wouldn't be surprised if something else related to the pole migration turns up around about that time. So put that on your calendar. I haven't got a problem if I'm wrong about that. I feel confident though. I have told a few people. I told a couple of people last week that this was going to happen with the markets. So we'll just see. By any means, I haven't got a crystal ball. So, it's just best guess on what I see with these charts and things. So, guys, you take care. get a few of those things that might disappear off the shelves first. If global shipping is reducing, then will we start to see some of those things that we like, in the morning? A cup of coffee, say, for instance. Will that coffee disappear if it's not being shipped? Who knows? Link down there if you want to support the channel. I'll say what I usually do, guys. You take care, and bye. And I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.